I think his enduring appeal to contemporary audiences is owing to several things. His personal lyricism, his plays have a poetic quality that, along with the best plays of world theater, seem to endure. There's a timelessness to the plays. The subject matter is the affairs of the heart frequently, and that, of course, has a universal application. And after all, when you think of a play like The Glass Menagerie, it's a family drama, and how many of us do not have problems with our families? If Williams were alive today, I think that he would be looking at the world through the lens of someone who is very troubled with the direction that it's headed. I think that he would be particularly disturbed by the continuing arms race, even though that's a passé term, and in fact it still endures. All you have to do is look at the North Korean, South Korean situation right now to see what a precarious state this world is in. And towards the end of his career, he was writing plays that were apocalyptic and really disturbing, with images of nuclear holocausts. And so he became increasingly more paranoid in his later years, and I think that he saw the direction that we were going in was not a good one. Well, actually, his favorite play is kind of an odd one. It was called Outcry, or the two-character play, and it's really about him and his sister. And it's a very pared-down play, very spare and economical in its language, sort of Pinteresque, actually. And he kept coming back to this play over and over, but he would often do that with several of his plays. He would say that a play is never really fully finished. He was working on, one morning Gore Vidal walked into his apartment, this was in the 1950s, I believe, and said, "What are you working on?" And Williams said, "Oh, I'm working on Streetcar." And he said, "What do you mean? You finished this play, it's a masterpiece." He said, "Well, I really don't think that I got the ending right." I would say that his favorite character is probably Blanche Dubois. Williams believed that the self is divided into the male and female parts, and he actually said, "I am Blanche." So he very closely identified with her, and you know, she is arguably, of course, his finest creation. Williams leaves the house in 1938. He simply couldn't go on living with his mother and father and the squabbling, and so he gets in his car or gets on the bus and goes south to New Orleans, actually, and never really came home to live after that. He had been away from the house for several years. Prior to that, he had been away at university, and you know, he was always on the move. But once he left the house, he sort of rediscovered himself in New Orleans. And he, from then on, never really took up residence in the home again except for brief stays. I think that love and happiness was very elusive for him. I mean, he had an enormous number of friends, but even his close friends would have a hard time getting really close to him. So I think, as with some of his characters, love is an elusive bird that seems to flutter away. After 1970, he really does become more upfront with sexual issues. And this, for example, we see in Vieux Carré, where we have a sexual act being performed on stage. And he became increasingly more emboldened by his coming out in the 70s, and this is reflected in his work, and particularly in his fiction. Well, I think in 1944, when this play premiered in Chicago before it moved to Broadway, audiences were ready for something new. They were tired of the staid realism and the absolute representation of reality as it exists on stage. And they were ready for something different, and here was this strange playwright with this strange name who nobody had heard of, but he put this play on stage, and the critics really are what saved it. The play was almost doomed by poor ticket sales at first and a terrible Chicago winter. And it wasn't well attended at first, but as the reviews, particularly Brooke Atkinson, started pouring in, the crowd started swelling, and word got out, and I believe as much as anything it was the incredible performance of Laurette Taylor as Amanda that really made Williams famous and made this play move to Broadway. His father liked the fact that his son was finally making money. But the mother, of course, as Williams tells it, did not see anything of herself in Amanda, even though Dakin Williams, Tennessee's brother, said that she was the spitting image, as he called Amanda, of his mother. After all, it's not easy to put your mother on stage for the world to see, and when you read the stage directions, the character descriptions for Amanda, it seems as though he's being very careful in how he's describing her in those stage directions. Of course, his brother was not in the play, and we don't really know what Rose thought of it. I'm sure that she was fascinated with the fact that he was gaining fame, but of course by then she had the lobotomy, so her reactions to it are probably have never been recorded, I wouldn't think. He was heavily influenced by Erwin Piscator, or Piscator, however you choose to pronounce his name. And you see these screens and other sort of expressionistic devices appearing in early plays of his, particularly some of his apprentice work. And I think that it was maybe a conscious emulation of some kind of elements of European theater that were incorporating this into the drama. And of course those stage devices have been used in some productions, they have been excluded in other productions, but there weren't that many that he chose to incorporate these screen devices and so forth into. So some people like this play better with the devices, and some prefer the play without them. Well, he had a lot of drama in his own household, so he had good material to work with. He doesn't have his mother in that many of his famous plays. When you see his mother appearing in a lot of his apprentice plays and some of the unpublished work. But the exception is his sister Rose. I mean, it's as though if you took a picture of Rose and tore it into 100 pieces and let them float down, they would find their way into his work. This was the love of his life. And he saw her life as being so tragic that, again, it's great material for presenting a character who is at odds with the world, who is disadvantaged psychologically, who's extremely troubled. And so we see elements of Rose in Blanche, for example. We see elements of Rose in so many plays, really too many to mention here. And they were extremely close. Even after she was institutionalized, Williams would go visit her and, in fact, gave his entire will to her. Pending her death, nobody got any of their money, nobody got any of their hands on the money until Rose died. And one of the curious things about Williams is he actually believed that he would end up being insane himself, and sort of envisioned himself spending the rest of his years, his final years, in an institution with his sister.